The afternoon sun glinted off Lucas's red sports car, parked in front of a luxurious mansion. Pedro, curious and full of energy, approached the vehicle, unaware of the consequences of his innocent actions. With a stone in his hand, he started scratching designs into the shiny paintwork. To him, it was just a game, but the metallic sound of the scratch echoed like a warning shot. Lara, who was carrying grocery bags, froze when she saw what was happening. In seconds, she dropped everything and ran to her son, pulling his hand firmly, her heart racing. "Pedro, what have you done?" she whispered, trying to hold back her panic. Her eyes were drawn to the damaged paint, a white streak cutting through the red like an open wound. Fear gripped her chest. After all, this wasn't just anyone's car. It belonged to someone wealthy enough to ruin her life with a single, impossible bill. It was then that Lucas appeared, drawn by the noise. Tall, polished, and with a natural air of authority, he walked over slowly, taking in the scene. His light eyes fixed first on the scratch, then on Lara, who held her son tightly against her, as if shielding him from the whole world. "Is this your son?" he asked, his tone cold and disbelieving. Lara swallowed hard, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. "Yes, he's my son, and I'm so sorry. He didn't know what he was doing," she whispered, barely daring to look up for long. Pedro, unaware of the seriousness of the situation, buried his face in his mother's shoulder, ashamed. Lucas let out a deep sigh, as if weighing whether to lose his temper or keep control. "This car isn't a toy. Do you have any idea how much it's worth?" he said, raising an eyebrow challengingly. Lara took a deep breath, trying to stay calm in the face of his intimidating demeanor. "I can't afford to pay for it, but I'll find a way. I work hard, and I'll make this right, no matter what it takes. Just, please, don't take it out on him," she pleaded, holding Pedro closer. Lucas was struck by Lara's unexpected determination. It wasn't often someone stood up to him like that, especially someone from such a different background. He watched her silently for a few seconds, intrigued. The contrast between her vulnerability and her courage sparked a flicker of curiosity in him. Still, his tone remained stern. "I'll think about what to do, but make no mistake, this won't come cheap." As Lucas walked away, Lara felt her legs go weak. The tension overwhelmed her. But there was something else besides fear, an uneasy feeling that being under that man's gaze had changed everything. Pedro, still innocent, simply held her hand, unaware that a single scratch on a shiny car had set off a storm.
On the way home, Lara tried to comfort her son, telling him everything would be okay. But inside, she was consumed with anguish. How could she possibly confront such a powerful man? The scratched car was just the beginning of a much larger conflict. That night, she barely slept, her mind racing about what would happen next. Lucas, lying in his spacious bed surrounded by luxury, couldn't forget the scene either. Lara's determined look bothered him more than the scratch on his car. Something about her challenged his worldview, as if she had planted a disquieting seed that was starting to take root in his heart. The next morning, Lara woke up with the weight of the previous day still on her shoulders. The fear of losing her job or being sued tormented her, but she knew she had to face the consequences. After dropping Pedro off at school, she went straight to the mansion where she worked as a housekeeper. Her heart pounded with every step toward the imposing gate, dreading the encounter with Lucas. Lucas was already waiting for her, impeccably dressed, as if prepared for a silent duel. His cold eyes fixed on her the moment she entered. "I've thought a lot about what happened yesterday, and I've decided you will pay for the damage. Not with money, because I know you don't have it, but in another way." His tone was measured, as if testing her limits. Lara lifted her head, determined not to show weakness. "I work hard. If you want me to work extra hours, to clean your house, to put in double the effort, I will do it. Just please, don't involve my son in this. He's not at fault for any of it," she replied, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. Lucas watched her in silence, once again surprised by the dignity she maintained under pressure. "You really think you can make up for a scratch that serious with more housework?" he questioned, crossing his arms. There was something provocative in his gaze, as if he expected her to give in or beg. But Lara didn't back down. "I can't give you what I don't have. I can only offer what I know how to do. Work honestly," she said, meeting his eyes. The tension hung in the air like a rope about to snap. Lucas, who never accepted less than what he demanded, found himself disarmed by the simplicity of her answer. For the first time in a long time, someone was confronting him without fear of losing something. He took a deep breath and looked away, intrigued and in a way unsettled by his own reaction. Pedro came running through the garden, having been brought by one of the staff. The boy ran to his mother, clinging to her skirt with an innocent smile. "Mom, I finished my drawing at school," he said excitedly, holding up a colorful piece of paper. The gesture, so pure and unassuming, contrasted sharply with the tension of the moment. Lucas watched, and for a brief instant, his hardened expression softened.
The sight of the mother and son's bond stirred something in him. It brought back memories of his own lonely childhood, surrounded by privilege but devoid of genuine affection. Pedro's smile awakened a feeling he couldn't quite name, but he quickly pushed the thought aside, regaining his rigid composure. "We'll settle this, but not today," he said, ending the conversation and walking away. Lara breathed a sigh of relief, even though she knew this reprieve was only temporary. Still, she noticed something different in Lucas's expression. It wasn't just arrogance anymore, but a hint of uncertainty too. It was as if he was torn between his usual coldness and a new, unfamiliar emotion. That night, as he thought over the day's events, Lucas found himself unsettled, not because of the scratch on his car, but because of the woman who refused to be intimidated, and most of all, because of the child who had managed to awaken a tenderness in him he thought was long gone. The following days were marked by a strange tension between Lara and Lucas. He always seemed to find an excuse to be in the same place she was, as if he wanted to observe her up close. Lara, though uncomfortable, remained steadfast. She had no intention of letting the millionaire see her fragility. But fate had a way of revealing what she tried so hard to hide. One afternoon, Pedro fell ill at school. Lara was called urgently and rushed to pick him up, finding the boy pale and weak. In a hurry, she took him to the public hospital, where the staff already knew her. The diagnosis was the same as before. Pedro had a rare illness that required expensive, specialized treatment, far beyond her means. Lara sat in the waiting room, holding her son's hand as silent tears fell. By coincidence, Lucas was also at the hospital, visiting an acquaintance. When he saw Lara sitting there with Pedro in her arms, his curiosity drew him closer. He noticed her exhausted expression and the boy's pallor, and for the first time, he realized there was something much more serious going on than a simple scratched car. "What's wrong with him?" he asked, his tone unexpectedly concerned. Lara took a deep breath, knowing she couldn't hide the truth forever. "Pedro has a rare illness. The treatment is expensive, and I do what I can to cover the basics, but..." Her voice broke. "I can't afford what he really needs." She tried to maintain her dignity, but the pain was clear in her words. Lucas felt a knot form in his throat. He had never put himself in the shoes of someone forced to choose between survival and financial impossibility. For him, money had always been an abundant resource. For the first time, he looked at Lara not as a debt to be repaid, but as a woman fighting with everything she had for her son. "And the doctors? Isn't there something that can be done right away?" he pressed, growing restless. Lara looked at him, surprised by the intensity in his eyes. "There is, but it costs more than I could earn in years of work." Her honesty hit him like a physical blow. Lucas fell silent,
weighing the gravity of her reality. Watching Pedro fall asleep in his mother's arms, Lucas felt something shift inside him. The boy wasn't just a problem or an inconvenience, he was a precious life, awakening in Lucas a strange desire to protect him. That simple scene unsettled his certainties and began to create cracks in his usual cold demeanor.
That night, as he lay in bed, Lucas couldn't sleep. The image of Laura holding her son haunted him. He felt a responsibility he couldn't explain. It was as if fate had put that scratch on his car not to anger him, but to lead him to a truth that would change his life forever. The next day, Lucas couldn't resist and went to see Laura at her simple home. When she saw him at the door, she was startled, still holding the apron stained from her work. "What are you doing here?" she asked, suspicious. He took a deep breath, looking around, feeling the contrast between her humble home and the luxury that surrounded him every day. "I want to help your son," he said directly, without any preamble. Laura blinked, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Help," she repeated, almost laughing from nerves. "We don't need your charity, Mr. Lucas. I've always managed on my own, one way or another." Her voice was firm, but it trembled slightly, as if she was afraid to believe it. Lucas took a step forward, trying to contain his impatience. "This isn't about charity. It's about saving his life. I have resources you don't have. Let me pay for the treatment." His tone was firm, but there was a sincerity in his eyes that Laura hadn't expected to see. She crossed her arms, defensive. "And what do you get out of this? What do you expect from me in return?" The question was heavy with mistrust. She was used to seeing ulterior motives in people, especially powerful ones. Lucas, however, seemed almost offended. "Nothing. I expect nothing. I just can't stand by knowing I can change this." Laura felt her heart race. Part of her wanted to refuse, to keep her pride intact. But when she looked at Pedro, playing with toy cars in the corner of the room, the mother in her spoke louder than the suspicious woman. "If I accept, it will only be for him, not for me." The words came out harsh, but her glistening eyes revealed the hidden vulnerability. Lucas nodded, respecting her position. "For him, then. But know that from now on, you are not alone in this fight." The weight of the promise hung in the air, like an invisible pact, sealing the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could imagine. In the days that followed, Lucas began organizing contacts with doctors and specialized clinics. Laura, still incredulous, watched him every move with caution, her heart divided between gratitude and the fear of placing her trust in someone from a world so different from her own. Pedro, meanwhile, seemed enchanted by Lucas's presence. The boy smiled whenever he saw him, and that smile began to create cracks in the emotional walls Laura had built. The millionaire who, until then, had never truly been involved with anyone, began to feel like a part of that small family, even if he wouldn't admit it out loud. And so, the scratch on the car became just a distant memory. The true impact of that encounter was only just beginning, and Laura, however resilient, knew her life would never be the same again.
Word of Lucas's help spread quickly among Laura's neighbors. Some commented with suspicion, others with envy, but everyone knew it would change her life. Laura, however, felt no relief. Her heart was torn between the hope of seeing Pedro get better and the fear that getting closer to Lucas might come with a hidden price. That week, she was asked to meet directly with the doctors at the private hospital Lucas had arranged. Walking into the room, she was surprised by the efficiency and attention given to her son's case. It was as if, suddenly, the world had opened up for Pedro, offering possibilities that once seemed completely out of reach. Still, Laura couldn't help but feel indebted. Lucas noticed her hesitation. "You don't owe me anything, Laura. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do," he said as they left the appointment. She, however, couldn't hold back her tears. "I've always fought my battles alone. I've always been told I couldn't count on anyone. Now you show up and I don't know if I can trust this." Her voice broke, but the honesty in her words was clear. The silence between them was interrupted when Lucas gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Trust isn't asked for, it's earned. The phrase echoed within her, creating an even greater inner conflict. Lara wanted to believe, but life had taught her to be wary of beautiful promises. Pedro, innocent of the tensions, smiled beside them, happy with all the attention from the doctors. The light in the boy's eyes was a silent reminder that, despite her fears, accepting Lucas's help had been the right decision. Yet Lara felt the road ahead was far from smooth. As they walked together to the car, Lucas found himself watching Lara differently. Her strength, even in the face of suffering, was something rare. Unlike the women in his social circle, who were mostly concerned with appearances and status, she was different. He began to realize his admiration for her was quietly growing. However, every step he took toward Lara also meant stepping away from the world he knew. And deep down, Lucas knew this wouldn't go unnoticed. The shadow of his family's disapproval already seemed to be looming, even before any direct confrontation. Lara, for her part, tried to convince herself that only Pedro mattered. But feeling Lucas's gaze on her, she realized something inside her was beginning to change too. A spark of hope, mixed with the fear of what might happen. The following week, Lucas went to Lara's house to pick her and Pedro up for a new appointment. When he stepped inside, he was struck by the simplicity of the place. Peeling paint, well-worn furniture, yet everything was impeccably clean and organized. It was an environment built on care and hard work, a world away from the luxurious mansions he was used to.
Pedro ran to show Lucas his room, proudly pointing out the drawings taped to the walls and the simple toys he treasured. Seeing the boy's happiness with so little gave Lucas a pang in his heart. It stood in stark contrast to his own childhood, which was full of material possessions, but empty of real affection. As Pedro chattered excitedly, Lara watched from a distance. She had never allowed anyone from the outside to get this deep into her life. Seeing Lucas there, sitting on her son's bed and listening to him with patience, filled her with a mix of gratitude and fear. After all, the closer he got, the greater the risk that everything could fall apart. Later, during the medical appointment, Lara noticed how involved Lucas was in the details, asking questions and taking notes. It wasn't just a gesture of goodwill, he genuinely cared. This attitude began to slowly break down the wall she had built around her heart. But outside the hospital walls, the world saw things differently. When they were seen together, rumors started to spread. Lucas's acquaintances talked at clubs and social gatherings, questioning why he was spending time with the housekeeper. To them, it was unacceptable, a scandal waiting to happen. Lucas, however, didn't seem to care about the gossip. His attention was increasingly focused on Lara and Pedro, as if the rest of the world were just background noise. For Lara, this attitude was comforting, but also dangerous. She knew his world wouldn't allow this closeness to continue easily. That night, as she lay in bed, Lara thought about everything that was happening. She felt grateful for Lucas, but also terrified of losing the little stability she had. After all, the more involved he became, the stronger the resistance would be from the wealthy, powerful family that surrounded him. Across town, Lucas also couldn't sleep. For the first time, he was questioning his place in the world. Was it worth holding on to the weight of an inheritance and traditions that had never brought him happiness? The answer wasn't clear yet, but Lara and Pedro's presence in his life were starting to show him a new path. As the weeks passed, Lucas became a more constant presence in Pedro's life. He took him to appointments, brought him small educational toys, and, most importantly, offered his genuine companionship. To the boy, it was like gaining an unexpected hero, someone who can make him laugh even on days when his illness left him feeling weak. Lara, however, remained watchful. She observed the affection Lucas showed with caution, but she couldn't ignore the positive change in Pedro. The boy seemed happier, more lively, as if simple kindness was part of the treatment. This left her torn between gratitude and fear. On a rainy afternoon, as Lucas helped Pedro put together a puzzle, Lara caught herself smiling at the sight of them together. The scene felt so natural that, for a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like if his presence were permanent. She quickly pushed the thought away, feeling guilty for wanting something that seemed impossible.
Lucas, for his part, was also starting to see Lara differently, not just as a devoted mother, but as a woman with a quiet strength. The way she faced hardships without being defeated sparked an admiration in him that was quickly turning into something deeper. That same night, while driving Lara and Pedro back home, Lucas broke the silence in the car. "You know you can count on me for anything, not just the treatment," he said. His tone was firm, but it carried a warmth that made Lara's heart beat faster. "I know," she replied, trying to disguise the whirlwind of emotions inside her. The atmosphere between them grew more intense, though neither had the courage to admit it. It was as if they were dancing around a flame, knowing that sooner or later they would be consumed by it. Pedro, innocent, simply enjoyed the constant presence of his new friend, unaware of the weight of the choices that lay ahead. Still, Lara knew the outside world wouldn't easily accept their closeness. Her protective instinct screamed at her to pull away, but her heart was slowly starting to ignore reason. What began as an impossible debt was turning into a bond that felt unbreakable. While Lara and Lucas navigated their almost secret connection, rumors in the Millionaire's social circles gained strength. Mean-spirited comments spread at dinners and gatherings, always accompanied by disapproving looks. Lucas's family, especially his father, didn't waste time confronting him. "Have you lost your mind?" his father said, furious, during a meeting at the family mansion. "Being seen with a housekeeper and her son? It's a scandal. You're tarnishing the name we've built for generations." His voice echoed through the halls like a verdict. Lucas, however, stood his ground. "It's not a scandal. It's just an honest woman and a boy who needs help." The tone of his reply surprised everyone. His mother sighed, trying to appeal to his reason. "Lucas, you don't understand. This kind of involvement isn't permitted. You have responsibilities, an image to uphold." The words echoed in his mind, but they no longer carried the same weight. Lucas was beginning to see that his entire life had been shaped by others' expectations, never by his own choices. And for the first time, he didn't want to submit. Meanwhile, Lara began to feel the pressure indirectly. A neighbor mentioned seeing her name in a gossip column, hinting at a forbidden romance with the millionaire. The news shocked her. The last thing she wanted was for Pedro to become the target of cruel gossip.
That night, when she met Lucas, Lara was direct. "I can't let this continue. People are already talking about us. It will only hurt Pedro." Her voice trembled, not just from fear, but from pain. Lucas stepped closer, his gaze firm. "I don't care what people say. What matters is you. What matters is him." His words touched a deep place in Lara's heart, but they also terrified her. She knew the pressure wouldn't lessen, it would only grow. The closer Lucas got, the stronger his family's reaction would be. Still, she couldn't bring herself to push him away. Her silence was confirmation that despite her fear, she was already in too deep to retreat. The rumors in the gossip papers and magazines intensified. Photos of Lucas with Lara and Pedro began to circulate, accompanied by sensationalist headlines. To the public, their relationship was a forbidden romance, a scandal tarnishing his family's reputation. Ashamed and worried, Lara feared Pedro would face prejudice because of something he couldn't understand. Lucas, however, didn't seem shaken. He remained present, ignoring the criticism. But this stance further infuriated his father, who decided to take firm action. If you continue with this woman and that child, you will lose everything: your name, your inheritance, your position, he threatened during a tense conversation. Laura, in turn, began to face pressure in her work as well. Some of her employers insinuated she was taking advantage of the millionaire, while others let her go with flimsy excuses. She felt her world crumbling around her. One night, crying alone, she seriously considered asking Lucas to walk away for good. But when she looked at Pedro, smiling next to him, her heart wavered. The boy had found a father figure in Lucas that he'd never had. How could she take that away from him? It was a cruel choice. Protect her son from the outside world's malice, or let him experience, even if just for a little while, the joy of being loved like family. One afternoon, Lara was surprised by an unexpected visitor, Lucas's mother. Unlike her husband, she wasn't furious, but her gaze held a mix of compassion and judgment. "You are a good woman, I can see that, but you don't belong in our world. Spare your son and yourself this suffering. Walk away before it's too late." The words hit Lara like daggers. However polite, they made it clear she would never be accepted. She felt the weight of rejection, but also the strength of her decision. She would not abandon her son, nor would she let their newfound love be suffocated by appearances. Lucas was furious when he learned about his mother's visit. "They have no right to talk to you, no right to judge you," he said, gripping Lara's hands with intensity. "I will fight for this, for you both." His tone left no room for doubt. He was willing to face anything. Despite all the pressure, Lucas remained a constant presence in Lara and Pedro's lives. Every gesture confirmed his determination not to back down. He spent his nights researching treatment options, making contacts, and attending every appointment. For Lara, it was impossible not to be moved by such dedication.
That night, after a long day of tests, Lucas took Lara and Pedro to a simple restaurant for dinner. Unlike the luxurious places he usually frequented, he seemed at peace there. Pedro laughed loudly, playing with his napkin as if it were a little airplane, and Lucas patiently played along. Lara watched the scene with a tightness in her chest. For a moment, it was as if they were a real family. "I know you're afraid," Lucas said, looking directly at Lara, "but I want you to know that I'm not going to give up on you, not on your trust, and not on his smile." His words left her breathless. For the first time, she felt she wasn't alone in this battle. But at the same time, the weight of the decision they both faced grew heavier. Meanwhile, the newspapers published even more aggressive headlines. "Heir scandalizes family with unlikely romance," read one. Lucas was confronted at social events where old acquaintances mocked his choices. He, however, didn't back down. "I'd rather lose everything than live trapped in a life that doesn't make me happy," he replied at one such gathering, surprising even himself. Lara, though moved by his stance, still feared for the future. She knew Lucas's family wouldn't give up easily. The price for this love was getting higher and higher, and she didn't want Pedro to be the one to pay it. One night, after putting Pedro to bed, Lara found herself alone with Lucas in the living room. The silence between them was broken by an unexpected confession. "I love you both," he said, his voice firm and sincere, "and nothing anyone says will keep me away." Tears streamed down Lara's face. For the first time, she didn't try to resist. She just hugged him, allowing herself to believe that, despite all the obstacles, there might be a real chance for their love. Winter arrived, bringing colder nights and growing worry for Lara. Pedro began showing more serious symptoms, becoming weak even with the care he was receiving. With each new crisis, his mother's heart broke, while Lucas, standing beside her, tried to find the strength not to show his own fear. During an emergency hospital stay, the doctors were direct. The treatment needed to be intensified immediately, or Pedro would be in serious danger. The cost, however, would be even greater. Lara felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Tears fell uncontrollably, and once again she blamed herself for not being able to give her son everything he needed.
Lucas, steadfast, didn't hesitate. "We'll do whatever is necessary. The cost doesn't matter." But as he made that decision, his family reinforced their threats. His father came to see him personally at the hospital with a cruel proposition. "I'll pay for the boy's entire treatment, but in return, you walk away from her for good." The offer left Lucas stunned. The temptation to accept, for Pedro's sake, crossed his mind, but the thought of abandoning Lara tore him apart. He refused immediately, and the argument ended in shouting, with his father swearing he would lose everything he had. Lara noticed the growing tension and, in a moment of desperation, thought about leaving on her own. Maybe if she disappeared, Lucas wouldn't have to give up everything. But every time she saw her son smiling next to him, her resolution wavered.
Even when he was weak, Pedro seemed to draw energy from Lucas. He would hold his hand during tests and ask him to tell stories before bed. The connection between them was so strong that Lara knew separating them would be impossible. That night, seeing Lucas asleep in a chair next to the boy's bed, Lara cried silently. She had never imagined a man like him would give so much of himself. The fear of the future remained, but a new certainty grew in her heart. Lucas wasn't just temporary help. He was an essential part of their lives. A few days later, during a public family meeting, Lucas was confronted once and for all. His father, furious, exposed him in front of all their relatives and business partners. "This man is willing to throw away generations of work and honor for a housekeeper and a child that isn't even his." The words echoed like a cruel verdict. All eyes turned to Lucas, expecting him to back down, to deny it, to be ashamed. But for the first time in his life, he held his head high and answered without fear. "That child who isn't mine is worth more than all the fortune you have. And that woman you look down on is the strongest, most genuine person I have ever known." The silence that followed was absolute. Then his father, red with fury, announced the irrevocable decision. Lucas was disinherited. All properties, accounts, and privileges were to be revoked immediately. The millionaire heir ceased to exist in the eyes of everyone present. Lara was shocked when she heard the news. She found Lucas, desperate for an explanation. "Why did you do this? You didn't have to give up everything," she said, tears in her eyes. He held her face firmly and replied, "Yes, I did, because none of it would have any value if I had to live without you both." His words left her speechless. Lara cried in his arms, feeling the gravity of his sacrifice. At the same time, a mix of fear and admiration filled her heart. For the first time, someone had chosen to stand by her, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, the press reported Lucas's fall from grace as if it were a spectacle. "From luxury to poverty for a forbidden love," the headlines read. But for him, there was no regret. For the first time, he felt truly free, even in the face of uncertainty. Hand in hand with Lara and Pedro, Lucas left the mansion and his privileges behind. A simple, difficult life awaited them, but inside, he held the conviction that his true home was being built at that very moment, not with wealth, but with love. The change was abrupt. From a life of luxury and comfort, Lucas moved into a small rented house with Lara and Pedro. The furniture was simple, the space was cramped, and financial worries became part of daily life. For Lara, this was her normal reality. For Lucas, it was a shock, but also a lesson that was transforming him with each passing day.
In the very first days, he realized how hard it would be to find a job. Without his family's backing, and labeled by the media as the rebellious heir, Doors were closing at the mention of his name. Still, he didn't give up. He woke up early, went out looking for opportunities, and came home late, tired, but always with a smile for Pedro. Laura watched him with a mix of admiration and worry. She feared Lucas wouldn't be able to handle the weight of a simple life, that he would eventually regret his choice. But every gesture of his proved the opposite. He didn't complain or feel sorry for himself. He just kept fighting, the way she always had. The difficulties, however, weren't just material. Pedro needed to continue his treatment, and the costs were still far beyond their means. Laura felt desperate, but Lucas wouldn't let hope die. "We'll manage, even if I have to work 3 jobs," he would say with determination. Amidst it all, there were moments of tenderness that strengthened the small family's bond. Improvised dinners of rice and beans, laughter over simple games, evenings where Lucas would tell made-up stories to help Pedro fall asleep. The simplicity revealed an unexpected happiness, even though their struggles couldn't be ignored. One night, Laura found Lucas sitting in the backyard looking up at the starry sky. She approached and asked what he was thinking about. He replied in a quiet voice, "I always thought freedom meant having everything. Now I see that freedom is being able to choose who you stand beside, even with nothing." His words touched a deep place in her heart. Yet her fear never fully left her. Laura wondered how long Lucas could really endure this new life. His sacrifice was immense, and deep down she feared that sooner or later the difference in their worlds would pull them apart again. But seeing him play with Pedro the next morning, she realized he had already made his choice. The past didn't matter, what he had lost didn't matter. Lucas was here, and that was enough to keep hope alive. Pedro's condition took a turn for the worse, bringing back the desperation Laura knew too well. The boy needed a specific, imported medication with an extremely high cost. Without the resources, the possibility of continuing his treatment seemed to be slipping away. Laura cried silently, believing that this time there was no way out. But Lucas refused to surrender. He spent days going door to door, seeking help, talking to old acquaintances, doctors, and even support organizations. He faced humiliation and rejection, but kept insisting. "I won't let him die because of money," he repeated to himself like a mantra. Finally, he made contact with an international NGO that helped children in similar situations. Thanks to his persistence, Pedro was accepted into their program, guaranteeing access to the medication. When he told Laura the news, she broke down in tears, hugging him with a gratitude that was beyond words.
"You did the impossible," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Lucas simply smiled, wiping away her tears. "I just did what any father would do." The words took Lara by surprise, and for the first time she didn't correct or deny them. Deep down, she knew Pedro already saw him that way. The arrival of the medication brought hope for better days. Pedro, though still fragile, began to smile more often, filling the house with joy. Each of his laughs was a victory. Every small step a reminder that their fight was worth it. Lucas, in turn, felt more complete than ever. Despite the financial struggles, he had never experienced such a clear sense of purpose. The simple life with Lara and Pedro gave him meaning, filling a void that luxury never had. On a quiet night, after putting Pedro to bed, Lara and Lucas found themselves alone in the living room. She looked into his eyes and said, "I never thought anyone was capable of so much. You didn't just enter our lives, you transformed them." Lucas held her hand, and without needing more words, the silence between them spoke louder than any promise. It was definitive proof that even without fortune or status, true love could move mountains. And in that moment, they both knew they were willing to face anything together. The following months brought profound transformations for the small family. With continuous treatment, Pedro began to regain his strength, returning to playing in the backyard and running with his characteristic energy. Each of his laughs was a balm to Lara,
who could now see a future that once seemed unreachable. Lucas, meanwhile, found a job at a small company thanks to an old colleague who admired his courage to start over from scratch. The salary was modest, but enough to support their simple home and provide dignity. Unlike before, he didn't see work as an obligation, but as a way to sustain the life he had chosen. The humble house, once marked by fear and scarcity, was now filled with love and unity. On weekends, Lucas cooked with Lara, amid laughter and minor kitchen messes, while Pedro invented stories with his toys. They were simple moments that became eternal in the hearts of all three. Challenges, of course, didn't disappear. Lucas's name was still a target for media comments, and the shadow of his powerful family still loomed over their choices. But unlike before, he was no longer shaken. What mattered now was protecting the home he had built, with roots stronger than any fortune. Lara finally believed she wasn't alone anymore. The weight she had carried for so many years was now shared, and beside Lucas, she felt stronger. For the first time, she dreamed of a future where Pedro could grow up healthy and happy, surrounded by genuine love. One evening, while walking down a street lit only by the faint glow of streetlights, Lucas stopped, held Lara's hand, and looked deeply into her eyes. "I lost an inheritance, but I gained something no amount of money could ever buy. A family." The simple words were enough to bring tears to her eyes. Pedro, walking between them, held their hands and smiled. "Now we're like those heroes from the stories you tell me, Lucas." The innocence of his statement made them both laugh, and, at the same time, reflect on how much they had conquered together. The future was still uncertain, but the present was full of love and hope. And in that moment, Lara, Lucas, and Pedro knew that even without riches, they had found the real treasure, a home built on love, sacrifice, and the courage to defy the world. It was only the beginning of a new life, simple, challenging, but profoundly happy. Just as Lucas chose love for fortune, choose to support stories that touch the heart. Subscribe now and be part of this unforgettable emotional journey.